Welcome to Recycled Idaho, where two recycling industry veterans, Brett Eckhart and Nick Snyder, explore Idaho businesses and organizations that are putting in the work to keep Idaho environmentally and economically viable at the same time. Take a listen to how these entrepreneurs, business owners, and operators are making things happen in the great state of Idaho. In this podcast, Nick and I made our way over to Burley, Idaho, to sit down with Josh Bartolome and Nate Francisco of Southern Idaho Solid Waste. These two guys are making waves in the solid waste industry, and they're doing it right here in Idaho. Take a listen and go check out the YouTube version of this podcast, as there's some great video shot of the landfill's daily operations.
Right now we're speaking with Nate Francisco, and he really specializes in the landfill gas and environmental side too, I believe. And could you tell us a little bit about the landfill gas and how that works?
Yeah, sure. So I'm the environmental manager here, and I'm part of that. What I do here is I make sure that we're compliant with all of the regulations, environmental regulations. Part of that at a landfill is when you place garbage in a landfill, it starts to break down immediately. It starts to decompose just like it would in compost or something else like that. And so over a period of 1 to 2 years, that breakdown, that decomposition uses up all the oxygen. When that happens, a new type of organism comes in that creates methane. So anaerobic bacteria, those are the ones that create methane, which is similar to natural gas that you're pulling out of the ground. Natural gas has about 99% methane. Our gas has about 50% methane. So we've got about half of the energy value of natural gas, and it's just coming out of garbage that we're burying. We don't have to do anything special other than put in a network of piping that can extract that gas out. So it's a resource that we're creating. The more garbage we put in, the more gas we create.
Does the pipe go over the top of the trash, of the solid waste? Does it sit on top? Does it sit below, like where the liner is, or does it sit in the middle? How does that framework of piping work to pipe the gas to where it needs to go?
Sure, all of the above. So
Okay.
we place the pipe as we build the landfill. So when we first put in the liner on the bottom, we'll put in a series of pipes that are meant to collect the moisture as it percolates down from the landfill, and so we can evaporate that moisture. We also can extract gas through those pipes, and then as we build the landfill up, we put in a network of pipes that we can hook onto at a later date to extract the gas out of its 6-inch perforated pipe, HDPE. So then what we do is we hook it up to headers that go around the perimeter of the landfill, and those headers have blowers attached to them at a skid, 2 big motors and blowers that create a vacuum. So we're actually hooking up to each end of those pipelines and putting a constant vacuum of about 30 inches of water column on the landfill.
So as you build out the landfill, you add another blower, another section to it, and then pull it to the, I would assume, like the main trunk or whatever that pushes it into the plant?
Sure, so the blowers kind of all sit on one skid at the end of where all the headers come together. And we oversize those so that as we expand, they have enough capacity to just ramp them up and create that constant vacuum on the landfill. So now with our system with the landfill gas to energy, we've got those blowers. They used to go to a flare where we would just burn the gas and destroy all the harmful, contaminants, pollutants. Instead of doing that, we're sending it to a conditioning skid or compression skid. And what this does is we actually have another set of blowers that pressurizes the gas. And when we pressurize the gas, it heats up, and it actually, all the moisture in the gas will vaporize when we heat it up, and we'll run it through an aftercooler and a chiller that brings that temperature down to the dew point. And when that happens, it forms water droplets within the gas that we can remove. So we run that through a coalescing filter, drops out all the water. And when that water drops out, when those water droplets form, it actually binds up some of the contaminants in the gas that are on our engines as well. Mm-hmm. Silicon and hydrogen sulfide, other types of sulfur, things like that actually drop out at that point as well. And then after we do that, we warm the gas back up. With the hot gas that's coming in, we have a heat exchanger and we send it back over to the engines. So we send it to our energy plant.
So as the engines run, then I assume that's what then generates the electricity?
Sure, yeah. So that cleaned up gas goes over. Right now we've got 2 Siemens HGM 560 engines. Each one produces about 1.3 kilowatts or kilowatt hours of energy. That gas comes in, it's distributed evenly to the two engines, and then a fuel regulator speeds up and slows down the gas based on whatever power output we ask it to produce. So if we ask it to produce 1.1, it'll back off on how much gas is going to the engines. They're a reciprocating engine. They're basically a large train engine, locomotive engine, or a tugboat engine that's converted from diesel over to landfill gas. So it's kind of a converted. It's like a diesel engine with liners, but it's got a spark plug in the top. So it's kind of a mix of the two. It runs that engine, which runs a crankshaft, which then turns a generator and alternator on the end of the engine.
Does that run 24 hours or just during when you guys are here?
Yeah, so it's base load. We run 24 hours unless we have scheduled maintenances or power outages, things like that.
Does Idaho Power determine how hard you run it or how many kilowatts, or do you guys, is that all done internally? Do they tell you, hey, we can use as much as you can send us, or is it, who determines the pull, I guess?
So we determine it. The only thing that Idaho Power holds us to is what we tell them we will do. So we can set our power production where we want it to be, but if we tell them that we're going to have a certain amount of power, we need to produce that certain amount of power, or there could be penalties involved with not meeting our quota.
So when we get our power purchase agreement through Idaho Power too, we tell them how much we're going to produce, and like right now our project is 5 megawatts. Right now we're at like 2.6 megawatts, so we can do anything within the first 5 years up to 5 megawatts. So we've sized our facility to be able to put another generator in because we know that we can go up to that nameplate capacity of the 5 megawatts. So we saw a lot of future installations.
Was that because of cost, like we were talking about earlier? Is it because you wanted to make sure that you could basically piece it and part it together versus going all the way to trying to produce 5 right out the gate? Starting kind of getting everything rolling and then being able to add on pieces, or what determined that?
Yeah, when I talked about the more garbage you put in, the more gas you get. So we just didn't have enough gas to run 3 engines, so it wasn't efficient to have 3 engines running at 60% when we started, because the maintenance cost is the same even if you're running at 60% or 100%. So your maintenance cost goes up, but your production stays low. So we needed to get to a point where we're running the 2 we have 80-90% capacity before it makes sense to get that 3rd engine in. So it's just the amount of gas that we have.
So 4 years it took you to get it done, and now 4 years later, would you change anything that you did with it? Would you do it different, or are you happy with it?
I'm happy with it. I think a project of this size, you rarely go without hiccups involved. So when you look back at all the hiccups, I think the success could be based on how you reacted to those hiccups and how you move forward and how you made it a successful project. And so if that's the way you look at it, then yes, it's been a successful project, and I wouldn't change what we have out here. I would have done it sooner. This is the one thing that I would have changed. I would have tried to push this so we could get it in sooner and start using the resource that we had out there instead of burning it off for several years.
I think that's what people can take away from it. Like I hope whether it's a landfill in Illinois or Ohio or New York, if they hear you say it and say the only thing we would have changed was we should have did it earlier. Maybe that's all they need to kind of push.
Sure. Is it pretty commonplace for landfills to do it, or is there a lot that could be doing it, they just haven't taken that leap?
So you're required to control the gas. Some people would rather control the gas than install capital infrastructure that's making money. It is cheaper to control the gas versus make electricity. We chose to make electricity out of it, so you can still control it by flaring the gas off, but because there's a lot of opportunity in it, landfill gas to energy is pretty common around landfills. There's a lot of other technology out there though. We spent 4 years seeing what type of project we wanted to install. because there were, at the time, we were looking at 4 different technologies. Now there's probably 40 different technologies to take advantage of this. So what we've done is pretty commonplace, but who knows what the future is going to bring. You know, there might be some new technology around the corner that just flips all of this around and we're doing something else with it, you know. That's the one thing that people always ask us is, well, what are you going to be doing with trash in 20, 30, 40, 50 years? You know, the answer is we don't know, you know.
Yeah.
It's all about a community and everybody. Are you going to be sustainable? Are you going to recycle? What are you going to do? And I think the longer we go as society, we're going to start to figure out what we're going to do, right? But I don't think it's going to be unheard of. You might see 50 years down the road where we're mining landfills. You know, think of all those resources that have been thrown away, and it's creating resources too. So we're creating gas, and now we're creating energy, but it is a commodity in the landfill, and I think that's something that people haven't really scratched their head around right now, is looking at a landfill as a commodity. And it could be a commodity for a couple different things, right? Producing gas, or the commodities that are actually in the landfill. So who knows what this industry is going to bring, but for right now, the landfill gas to energy is pretty common for landfills and doing something with the landfill gas.
I know this just from the scrap metal recycling end is, you know, when they started coming up with the technology to sort the fines and the stainless steel and the insulated copper wires and all that out of the Zorba coming off the shredders, you started seeing these companies go in and mine landfills in these big cities that had big landfills where they're taking all the shredder fluff. So for the last, I don't know, I'd say 10 to 12-ish years, they're going back in with all this mobile sort equipment, and they're mining all that shredder fluff back out of the landfill that's been buried for years, and just to pick out the stainless, the aluminum, all the stuff that got missed because they didn't have the technology to get down to the fines or the ability to pull out the Zorba, the stainless, the copper wire at the time. You know, the eddy current, the reverse eddy current to flip the aluminum's been around for a while, but it was never able to get the little pieces. You know,
it's such a simple technology that changed the industry. You know, an eddy current. You know, and who knows what the next thing is going to be. You know, that just hasn't been discovered yet, and it might be the simple flip of an electrode. You know, that just like an eddy current that might switch everything for us, and it's crazy.
And that's what we were talking about. What's just cool about the landfill and the recycling, the waste industry is, that's what you were saying, gets us up every day, is that you never know what's coming. Like, and as long as you're willing to change, and you don't get too pigeonholed into what you can do and what you can't do, you're willing to kind of look at it from another set of eyes. Get smart people like Nate in here that understand what he just said, which is probably over my head. There's no probably about it. But like, to be able to get that, I mean, that's what's cool about our industry. So thank you, Nate.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. And we're looking forward to showing everybody how that works.
Cool.
Let's go out to the landfill first. That way it's all kind of in order of everything that goes out here, and then the gas is the end of the process. So as far as the tour, these are all the trailers that sit at our transfer stations, and we push over the top and fill these up with garbage and then haul them out here from each site.
And those are not walking floors, those are bellies, because you guys actually have a tipper here.
Yep.
We used to have walking bed floors, so we still have some 45 footers that are walking bed floors, but we use them at our smaller sites. We try to get all of our sites using 53 footers if we can, just for efficiency.
And there's our wood grinder right there, that horizontal grinder on
And
there.
the bellies are cheaper than buying those walking floors as well.
Yep.
Especially on maintenance.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And we have, IMCO is, where is their site? Is it in
It's in Paul.
Paul?
Yeah.
So it's only 20 miles away from here too, so he does a good job.
So you can see up here on this part of the landfill too, it's covered in snow now, but this is all final closure on landfill. So this is what it'll look like for years to come. We put the compacted soil layer and then a layer of topsoil on top of that, and then revegetate it. So that keeps any moisture from entering the garbage. It also helps hold the gas in the landfill so we can extract it.
So the topsoil is what keeps it from entering?
No, the compacted does, but we put topsoil on so we can get vegetation to grow and it doesn't erode. So it doesn't erode over time. When we dig cells, the first thing we do is we go strip the topsoil, and then we stockpile that for when we do final closures in the future. So it all kind of comes back around in the end.
So the vegetation does help to lock everything into place, though. So the more vegetation you have, it does keep the air out once the vegetation.
What is the sand used for?
So what we can use the sand for, typically we use more gravel, but we can use the sand for putting on the liner. So when we put down the liner system, we put a protective layer on top of that, which helps.
Sand and gravel?
Yeah, so it's sand and gravel. It allows the moisture to percolate through once it leaves the garbage and then run down the liner downhill.
Okay.
It also protects you from getting punctures in the liner. So if when you tip garbage onto it, something sharp doesn't go down through the gravel.
How thick of a sand gravel layer do you put on top of your liner?
18 inches.
You know that picture that's down in the deal that Nate took with his iPhone?
Yeah.
So that's the spot. So once we're done with felt, then we come back over the top of that, and that'll be 2 to 3 foot of gravel. So that's the spot where we put it in.
And right here, if you look at this line, that's the end of where we did the final closure. So you can see how thick of a compacted layer that is. So when we come back eventually, you'll just start right there and start closing a new section.
And regulation height-wise, I mean, is there a reason why you go to that height right there versus building up higher, or do you use it?
Our initial design was done. It was done partially for aesthetics and partially just from the footprint that we have, so that we don't have too steep of slopes.
Okay.
So at some point you top out without having steeper slopes. We're actually doing a study right now. We purchased additional property that we're going to expand our design plan, and with that we think we're going to have the ability to go up another 80, 100 feet higher as well and gain space on top of cells that
So
we've
it's all
already
about
built and the
space.
expenses we've
Yep.
already had.
It's all about airspace.
Yeah.
That's the name of our game, is how much garbage can you fit into 1 cubic yard of airspace. So the more compact you can get that and the more weight in 1 cubic yard of airspace, the better off you are and the more efficient you are. So, when you're designing something, you don't want pyramids all over the place, right? Or you don't want something that looks like it doesn't belong. So we're built right into this butte right over here, and eventually when we build everything out, it'll essentially look like one big butte.
Yeah, you won't be able to tell, like really.
So like all this wood chip right here, is the purpose of that just for roadway right now, or is it that's just something that you're being hauled, or is that, because that's you guys are making that?
Yeah, so we use this for a wet time because the wood absorbs the water. We've got a real weird soil matrix out here, and when we get muddy, our soil just expands, and it gets it's just it's a pain in the butt to get into. So our guys like to put the wood chips on there, and then it absorbs the water, and then you don't deal with the mud as much as you would
guys
otherwise.
don't sell your wood chips then to like farmers or anything like that, or do you?
We do, but everything that we grind here at the landfill, we keep on site for operations. At all of our other sites, we do sell them, and we sell out all the time. But here, we use them on site for
What do the
operations.
farmers use the wood chips for?
Bedding.
Yeah, they use them for bed. A lot of them, like from the stuff that we buy, we only do one grind. So if you look at it, it's not great. If we reground our stuff, they could use it for bedding and other stuff. But the stuff that we do, you can see some of it right there. It's not super uniform. They use it for pivots, where their pivot tracks are, because they get big ruts in their fields. So they just
use it to fill the ruts?
Yep.
Okay.
So I'm sure it's a dumb question, but when we came out here last time, there was a crap load of seagulls, right? Mm-hmm. And I assume that the winter kills the drill on the seagulls, or I mean, you're still getting some.
We saw that hawk guy at that BSU thing.
Yeah, we don't get, there's not many
had
seagulls
them come out.
that stick around in the winter here. They migrate south, but they'll usually come back in the springtime and
that's
start
when you-
coming looking for the food source that they remember. Yeah.
Okay.
We brought that falconer out here though, and as soon as they unleashed the falcon, these birds just went crazy out
They
here.
left.
Yeah, they were just like, "What is this falcon doing
He
here?"
basically, I got a chance to talk to him for a while, but he basically said that if he brings it consistent presence.
Why don't we get up? Do you guys want to take some video of this dumping? Let's get up there by the truck and let him get out. We'll tell him not to dump until you're ready.
Yeah, that'd be a good shot.
If we could get like out by that blue.
What if I go over by the other tipper?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great idea.
So what makes you go with like a cat versus like one of those Aljon?
So we used to be with Aljon for a long time. They're a little bit smaller than this. They didn't, the size up that they had, they put in a different transmission and a different engine, so it was really powerful, but it was really slow, and we just couldn't deal with that. Plus, Aljon was bought out. Aljon went through some weirds, you know.
I know. That's why we would switch to Sierra balers.
That's the big reason why we went to Caterpillar, because we had spots where we couldn't get parts for like 6 months, and it was like rinky-dink part relays and stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Hey Josh, how many of these a day do you typically see?
It depends. I mean, we're probably doing 30 to 60 on like a super busy day. We, 5-6 years ago, we had days where we wouldn't even do 20 in a day. Like 17 was a pretty normal day.
Yeah.
We had a day a couple weeks ago where we did like 22 in one day from Twin Falls Transfer Station.
Wow.
Just a couple weeks
Do
ago.
you find it like busier in the springtime and all that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Is
As soon as
is it strictly population driven? Is it project driven? Like what's driven the increase? Is it like industry driven? Like what drives it? What drives it harder? More people, houses, or industry?
They all kind of come
Industry,
together.
yeah.
You've got industry that comes in, the
Then
people
you've
come
got the
with us,
housing.
so it
Yeah.
all kind
Yeah,
of
it's
happens at the
connected.
same time.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But we can tell from the industrial side, because that's an actual roll-off coming out, right?
Yeah.
We can, and it's a lot more volume coming out. We also can tell from the increase in just solid waste at the transfer station, but direct hauled industry waste, I mean, it's a lot. And I have to commend the economic development, not industry, but entities in our 7 counties. They've really done a good job on recruiting good companies in and working with us, and it's been really good.
So because you hear about it, the average person creates X amount of trash per month, week, year, whatever that is. I'm super curious, is that number getting bigger on a per person basis? Is it going, with all the recycling that's going on, is it coming down, or is it, has anybody ever ran that calculation for, population
So
here?
EPA does. EPA, the last time they ran that figure was years and years ago. I just was reading an article, and I think it was like 4.5 pounds of trash a week. Do you remember? Whatever it is, whatever that EPA default was, this study was finding out that it was almost double what EPA said on what the normal person was disposing of. I don't know how much, information or data, or if it was a report that would stand up to anything, but I'd say you're probably better. Think about all these things, people are wearing, the fashion. It's throwaway fashion, right? They wear a t-shirt, they travel somewhere, they buy it, they wear it a couple times, and then it's gone. It goes somewhere, That's going to be the next thing that you hear about is, what do they call it? Textiles. Textile recycling is going to be the next thing that you hear about. Like, why do we have so much textile
You
waste?
see like your youth ranches of the world, they're belling that, right?
Yeah, you see that. Think about all the single-use plastic stuff, coffee cups or the K-cup. There's just been so many inventions that innovate, but they might have a little bit more waste with it too. So
I heard somebody talk about it the other day, and it's time. Everybody's trying to figure out how to save time, and when you save time, you generally are going to create waste. Somewhere along the line, there's waste that's getting generated, and in all in an effort to save time, right? So like coffee, you never used to have to take it, all that. It's like, you think you're doing good, but you're not.
Yeah.
Well, if you're super focused on how do we get rid of it.
Yeah, it's society, right? Everything that we deal with is pushed by society, right? We didn't do that. We're just dealing with it.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that has upturns and downturns. I'm sure Josh already talked about the economics too. You know, and when times are good, people are using more single-use stuff. They're getting rid of more stuff. So how much they're getting rid of per day goes up. But then
So you
when the
can see
economy
an ebb
tanks,
and
people
flow
hold
with
on
the
to stuff.
economy,
They're getting stuff
too.
in bulk. They're getting things that aren't in little single-use packages.
You know, I
and things like
never
that.
thought about it that way,
Yeah,
but it
neither
totally
did I.
makes sense.
So we see those shifts here, you know, tonnage-wise.
You
right,
see an
with
ebb
the
and flow
economy.
with the price of scrap metal too.
Yeah.
Right.
Everything.
When the price of scrap metal is low,
Less
you see
batteries.
more
We get
flow.
Yeah. It's everything.
Yeah. So you.
So my predecessor Terry, he did a little study with the Ada County Deputy Director probably 10, 11 years ago, and it was solid waste volumes following the Dow Jones, and the solid waste volumes were a good 9 to 12 months ahead of what was happening in the Dow, because it took a year for that to catch up with the economy, and it really is true if you think about it.
Well, I believe that 100%. We see some of that on our end.
And we still see high volumes coming out. That's why everybody right now is talking about when's the recession going to hit.
Yeah.
Well, it all depends on where you live, right? But right now with our economy, I see us still having our solid waste volumes and still strong. So I feel like it's still at least 9 to 12 months.
Is there a whole lot of planning on year in, year out if you think it's going to increase, 25% in 2 years, or you just kind of go year to year?
We're doing a 20-year plan right now, but we plan every year. We look at it, we look at the budget time, and we'll make sure.
You might have said this already, but how many tons of waste?
So that's probably 20 tons, right? 20, 25 tons. We're about 1,000 ton per day landfill. About a 900 actually. We were 900 last month in December, and that's generally a pretty low month. So when you're talking about landfills, anything under about 500 is a fairly small landfill. Anything from 800 to 1,200 is a medium-sized landfill, and then anything over 1,200 is a fairly good-sized landfill. Like Ada County, they do about 1,500 tons a day.
Okay. That puts it in perspective.
So what about your big, East Coast landfills? What are your big landfills doing a day?
What does the Las Vegas landfill? Do you remember?
That's got.
So they have 9 tippers. They're running like 10 compactors, and it's 24/7. They got lights on at night.
Oh, really? They're running 24 hours.
I mean, they're doing at least.
What kind of
20,000,
schedule is this?
I don't have it now.
15,000.
What's your hours here?
We do 10-hour days, 6 days a week.
Okay.
And that's not all tipping time either, because we've got to cover, we got to get this garbage all covered at the end of the day. So we have to have a cutoff, an hour and a half before we close.
Okay.
That we got to start getting stuff
You
covered.
have to cover it at the end of each shift. Okay. I did not know.
And then
Is that a state?
we talk about seagulls.
Federal.
It's more so we don't attract more vectors, rats, seagulls, things like that. It's also for fire protection, because if we can get the oxygen, the air intrusion stopped, there's less likelihood of a fire happening.
From a regulation standpoint, is Idaho, do they make it easier or tougher to operate in than some of the other states? I mean, Idaho, from a landfill standpoint?
I think that they make it easier than a lot of states, mostly because, in Idaho's legislature, it says that we will not be more strict or less strict than the federal rules. So whenever we have solid waste rules coming out on a federal level, the state adopts them and enforces them.
Okay.
But they don't go above and beyond.
It can't be more stringent.
They can't go above and beyond what the federal does.
And right now with the governor going through with his red ribbon initiative, I mean, he's just striking laws out left and right. So they went through it. Nate and I went through our regulations, and we went through what else? We were doing something else too at the same time.
We're also on the air side of things, so we have to deal with a lot of air regulations as well. So we've got a solid waste side, and we got an air side, and a water quality side that we have to look at all 3 of those sectors.
But they stripped a lot of the regulation out. I mean, it was like a third of the overall laws that were on the books last year, they got taken out. They said if there's duplicative measures or if they don't need to be on there, take them out. So Idaho is the most business-friendly state to do business in right now.
Any of those scream out at you that could really help you guys that got off the list?
Not in ours, really. Ours were duplicative.
Just like less red tape.
You know, we like the way it is with Idaho because it gives us the flexibility. We can adhere to the minimum regulations, but then because we're efficient, we have the ability to go above and beyond on things that we want.
And I
to go
think
above
that's
and
what
beyond
gets
on.
lost in a lot of business and a lot of industry is if you put so much regulation on what this lawmaker feels important or this lawmaker feels important, and they direct all their energy towards these few things, and it makes you inefficient on the whole grander scheme of things.
Yeah.
It makes you inefficient on what you could be doing over and above to really take care of your industry, because you're just trying to put all your efforts to taking care of what some guy was really important to him versus what's important to the industry as a whole.
Right, and most people want to do the right thing. I mean,
I
almost
100%
everybody
believe that.
wants to do the right thing and do what they can afford to do to help out. But sometimes you get.
But you still have to keep the lights on. You guys still have 75 people that require a paycheck. You still have, there's just so many pieces and parts of that puzzle that get forgotten.
One thing I do have to say, though, is even with the regulatory framework the way it is right now, if there's any changes to the industry, they know that DEQ knows that we're organized and we're going to come to the table and we're going to be a part of that rulemaking process. So instead of trying to step back and be like, oh, why, I don't want to work with those guys, you know, they've been really good to say, come to the table.
Yeah.
We want to hear what you're saying and we want to work with you. So I've really appreciated that from our standpoint too.
And they get it too. They don't want to impose laws that people aren't going to adhere to because that just creates more work for them. So if you can come up with something that works for everybody, then it's better for everybody.
Just makes sense.
Should we ring back down to the landfill gas to energy?
Where are we headed now?
I was just going to run over by some of our diversion programs. We call them diversion, but essentially it's recycling. It's all stuff that we're diverting out of the landfill and reusing or sending off for recycling, those sorts of things.
This part right here, along with the gas, I think a lot of the public don't realize that landfills are doing this.
Right, and
They think it goes to landfill, it gets buried.
And this is lots of tonnage, you know. This is a lot of volume that we're saving, not only saving in the landfill, but that we're moving somewhere else and reusing.
Well, and you're using it.
Right.
You're using like your pallets and your wood and all that crap for roadway stuff.
Yep.
You're selling it to farmers. It's stuff that's being reused.
Well, here's the thing too that I think this is why it's such a aha moment is we did 250,000 tons of solid waste last year, but we recycled and diverted over 40,000 tons.
Oh, wow.
When you look at that, you know, and then you hear a city in their recycling program say, well, we recycled 2,000 tons last year. It's like, that's good, but we recycled 40,000. So my point is, people don't think of recyclers or people that do landfilling as recycling, right? But we're probably one of the biggest recyclers in the 7 counties because we're doing more volume than anybody else in recycling, you know?
Yeah.
And that's an aspect of our job that nobody even looks at.
And this isn't
just solid waste.
This isn't the sexy recycling, you know. It's not the plastic and the paper, but this stuff is a lot of volume.
That's the government side of it is, you know, they've teamed up with the republics and the big corporations of the world, and they've decided to push that form of recycling because it's like you said, it's sexier, it's prettier, it's easier to discuss. But you get down to the nuts and bolts of it. You know, you guys are talking about if you guys do 40,000 ton a year in recycling, and us combine our facilities, we do probably 60 to 70,000, you know, ton. I mean, where is that 60 to 70,000 ton and you're 40,000 ton, and we're just two players in a big industry. If you want to talk about recycling, you know,
I agree.
not exporting mixed waste, like recycling.
Right. Yeah, I agree 100%. And think about this too. Think about your, you know, let's just say combined we had 100,000 more tons a year. If that was being disposed of, think of how much more landfill space that would take, you know, over the term of history. Like, let's go over the landfill gas to energy. This is something too small, But, we know that we're paying to get rid of our tires. And we know that anywhere from 15 to 20% of the overall tonnage is going to come from the metal and the tires. So we were looking at derimmers, and for a good one, they're like 40 grand for everything that you would need.
Yeah.
So I just had my shop mechanic. I said, look, this is what I want. What can you do? He built one that was 3 times the size and beefed up better for $2,000 versus 40 grand,
And that was
So now
repurposing old equipment from the landfill.
Yeah. So now we recycle all the metal now, right?
So you just take a punch, you push it through?
Yep. Ours, it's a V, and then you push it with a double.
Like a wood cutter.
Yeah, it's just like a wood cutter.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Bend that rim and then
Same exact.
the rim right out the
Yep.
tire.
We looked at other, there's a lot of different designs for doing it, but for us, with what we had, that was the easiest. And ours is double ram too, so we took rams off of an old Aljon compactor. The rams were just to prop the compactor up to change the wheels. We used them like twice ever. It was a waste of money for the machine, but we just took them and popped them on that and said, oh, we'll use that.
Found the hydraulic.
We used one of these old I-beams as the frame.
So if you look up here, the pipes sticking out of the ground with the yellow hose, those are all landfill gas wellheads. So that at the end of every pipe that we're extracting gas, we can actually balance each pipeline. So different areas of the landfill have different ages of garbage and different types of garbage, even some of them. So we're able to go a couple times a month and turn those up, turn them down in order to get a consistent gas coming out of them.
So how often do you have to adjust those?
We're required to monthly, but we usually do it 2 to 3 times a month is how often we try to get out there.
Does that change or create the efficiency for the gas coming into where we're going right now?
Yeah, so the consistency and also the amount, the consistency and quality, so 50% methane or higher, and then also the amount, because it'll change with the seasons. When things warm up, we'll start getting more flow, which means we got to start popping those back open a little bit slowly. So
the barometric pressure has something to do with the flows coming through.
Yeah.
I mean, you name it, it's...
So after it's collected there, it gets popped into a header system, header pipes that bring it over to this first skid. This is where that black pipe coming out of the ground is where all the gas from the entire landfill comes in. That 12-inch pipe comes out. We knock out some initial moisture in a knockout pot, and then those are the blowers with those motors on them. That's where it gets transferred from vacuum to pressure. So it goes in one side, out the other side is pressure. The old flare where we used to burn the gas at about 1400 degrees to destroy it. Before it gets to that point now, it goes up that stainless pipe and over to our gas conditioning skid.
I met my wife because of this project, so I love this project.
The flare?
In 2009, yeah, when we installed this, my wife was a reporter, so she wanted to do a news story on this. That's where I met her.
Nice, that's cool.
Yeah, so everything comes on this overhead line. 2 more blowers here that kind of step up that pressure, and then it runs through that aftercooler fan and a chiller system. It knocks all the moisture out and then swings back around, heats it back up, and comes out this smaller line, and then we put it back into a 12-inch to head over to the energy facility.
And with this project too, we try to do as much as we can. So all of the pipe installs we did, all of the HDPE stuff,
Yeah,
we did all of the earthwork for the facility.
Well, that's what's cool is you guys are like a quasi-government in company, but you're also your own business. Like you get to kind of run it just like I would run our business or whatever. I mean, you kind of get, it definitely creates some more hurdles, but also I think it creates some more opportunity. If done right. If you fight the tape and you push back and you're not cooperative with all the other entities, I can see how it could create you a bunch of issues. But if you can figure out a way to get everybody talking the same language, then I mean, you really get it. You run it like it's your business.
Yeah, we really do. And You know, we've had people come out here, and we had a private landfill from Salt Lake area come up here one time, and they were a private entity, and they came up and kind of doing the same thing we're doing today. And the guy said, you know, this is the most privately ran public agency I've ever seen, and we take pride in that. You know, that's what we do. Is we want to do it. We want to do it right. We want to do it quick, and we want to do it fast and efficient. And so that was a huge compliment for us.
So I know you guys have been in here before. This is the control room. This is where our tech is in here making sure everything stays running, organizing all the maintenance that we have to do on the engine, and monitoring their performance individually. So
Does your tech need to be in here like all day, or can you just kind of check on it?
check. So everything's set up to be remote. So anything you see in here, we can access and we can control from our phone or laptop at home or from wherever we are. So we can do any of that remotely. We do have an on-call schedule so that if it's something you have to be on site for, if there's a shutdown, then someone's always on call to come out here and get things started back up.
So you want to just explain to us kind of what you got on here?
Yeah, so this is one of the engines, this is another one of the engines, and this is just the engine diagnostics. So it's got every sensor, and there are a lot of sensors on these things. Every sensor has an output on here. We're able to track them or graph any of them to see if there's any changes, set alerts. If things go outside of a certain range, you know, anything from 1800 RPMs. Our power setting on this engine right now is at 1,000 kilowatts, so we're producing 1 megawatt with that engine right now, which is about 1,000 homes. So with the two combined, we're doing about 2,000 homes worth of energy right now. Anything, the throttle, how far the throttle is open, each individual cylinder in the engine, monitor the temperature, we monitor how much it's knocking, monitor the kilovolts going through the spark plugs to see if there's a spark plug wearing out.
We measure so much that we know what temperature each spark plug is running at all times. I mean, you name something that you want a stat on, we've got it probably documented and downloaded.
Because we're always striving for efficiency, we learn how one thing affects the other. Because we have all this data, we can see that when we change one thing, say take for instance cylinder temperatures, we want to bring our cylinder temperatures down. A good way to do our overall temperature at our turbo down. If you run it harder, you're going to pull more air through the engine and actually run cooler than if you're running at a lower setting. So what it seems like would be the opposite actually makes your engine run cooler and more efficient by running at full throttle.
So when you guys were looking to install this system, when you guys, I assume, went to other landfills and like to see what they were running, how they were doing it, was there one or two of them that stuck out there, like, yeah, like that's the system we want? Like, what determined going this route?
Well,
Research-wise?
yeah,
I can probably answer that quicker.
that?
I said I'd probably answer that quicker is, Bannock County did one that was almost identical to this. The big thing is when you do a landfill gas to energy facility, typically with an entity like us, you team up with somebody, right? They come in and they say, hey, we'll build this plant, we'll do it, we'll maintain it, but we want to give you a kickback, right? 10% of the revenue or something like that. That's not a lot of money for us, and Bannock County said, we're going to do it all and we're going to take advantage of everything. So that was really enticing to us, and that's why we kind of followed that model. The project and the type of material that we use, the engines are different, but it's kind of the same idea, is we're doing everything, we're operating everything, where typically you would team up with somebody and have them operate it. We got sharp people here, we got people that can do it, so we took advantage of it. So that's
and as
the
far
big
as the
thing.
equipment we ended up with, when we said it, we're public, so we have to go out on a public bid. But we set this up not only we didn't want to just base it on price and output. We wanted it to be what is going to have the best return for the district over the term of our contract with Idaho Power. So we set it up that took all of the maintenance into effect, because you could say, well, our engine costs this much and we put out this much, but it's twice as much in maintenance. If you leave that part out, you could, not have as good a return. So we set it up so that they have to put in all those numbers and show us at the end how much money do we end up with after 20 years. Whoever gets the most net, that wins the bid. That's how we set this up.
Which is kind of beneficial in the fact
best way to do it.
They provide you a lot of that
financial data and what they're willing to do. So you kind of get whoever's trying to sell you on the equipment, like, hey, tell me how does this thing really perform, and then stick by it.
Yep.
Right. Yep. And then we also, we put clauses in there
That's what we did.
held them to those bids. So
Yeah.
they had, we said if it does not perform, if you don't get these heat values out of this engine, or we don't get the output you said you would, there's penalties involved within that bid. So
it's just a bid based on return on investment. So when we're spending public money, we want the best return on our investment. So the best way to get that is set the bid up to make them be as efficient as possible, and then they're competing to be most efficient to get more revenue at the end. So it was a win-win for the whole. It was a lot of work, but it was a win-win at the end there.
Let's see the
Sorry,
V's.
Nate.
okay.
The double V's.
I don't know if you just want to shoot through the window or what's
So some things that I didn't realize when we were doing this, those swamp coolers that you kind of feel cold air, they're kicking out 20,000 cubic feet per minute on that. You can't really feel it, but the big intakes over the top, that's the air exchanger. I mean, that's how much air is moving through there. You don't realize that,
Yeah.
Yeah, we got a big old fan right above us that
When we had
keeps the doors from blowing off.
we had the manufacturer of the engines come out here and do some training for all of our guys. And when they came and looked at our setup, they were like, "Oh God, this is great. We've never seen an install like this. Putting the swamp coolers in and having the cool air on the intake, it makes them run more efficient." Nobody else, they'd never seen that before. So, right. So that's the kind of stuff that we try to do it as efficient from the beginning, but then we try to get our engineers together and say, okay, now how can we make it more efficient, you know?
Yeah.
So that's that's why we like this project so much. It's not just a normal, we're like a one-of-a-kind, you'll never see another project like this out there.
The other
People are doing this, but not the same way
The
that
other
we
cool
are.
part too, well, as an aside to that, is when you're pulling air from inside of the building and then sending it outside with an exhaust, you create a vacuum inside of the building. If you didn't have those, you would create a vacuum and just suck dust into the building from outside. So by having those push more air than what's going out, we actually keep a positive pressure on the building, and we keep dust from getting out. So it stays clean, like you can see in there.
So some other cool stuff that isn't landfill gas to energy, but see these things right here?
Yeah.
So these are microbes that we're teaming up with another company in the area, and they have incubated, I guess is what you would say, methanogen,
In these.
What did I just say? Bacteria?
In these crates right here.
Microbes.
in these crates, yeah. So these methanogen microbes that they've produced, we're then taking it out onto our working face, and we're putting that on our working face to try to create more methane. Nobody else is doing that right now. I don't know of anybody that's doing that. Do you?
I think there's been some studies done in the past about it, but it's never really broken through.
Will you guys do a case study on that?
Yeah, we're seeing right now, we've got some old areas of the landfill that aren't great producers. So our hope is that, hey, maybe if we put these methanogen microbes down, it might start to produce that methane and
Which basically you're trying to get to break down faster.
or break down at all. If it hasn't broken down because,
It's
you know,
not
maybe,
producing gas,
right,
it's not breaking down.
something could have happened. They could have some waste that mixed in that isn't allowing it. It could have an air pocket that's completely shut up. I mean, there's a lot of things, so
And
that's why we're
And we're
hoping.
trying to get a research and development permit through the state and the EPA to do liquids addition into the landfill to help bring our gas curve up and produce gas curve. So if we have dry tomb areas of the landfill that are just dried out, so they can't sustain microbes, we can actually introduce moisture into that and then hopefully bounce those back up and
So
start
should
the
be just what, just
decomposition.
water,
Well, it could be leachate that's already coming out the bottom. We can just recirculate it back through into areas that need it. It can also be
Septic.
outside industrial waste,
Industrial waste.
wastewater, or septic out of septic tanks. A lot of different possibilities.
You can't put free liquids in a landfill, so if you bring something in that is a liquid, we can't take it. We can only take solid waste.
So these two, they powered 2,000 homes.
Yeah.
Right.
What's their max? Like, where could they get up to?
Like 2,500.
2,500 would be
together.
like the
You said you're
max.
running like 80 to 90%
Yeah.
efficiency, so that's when you have room for another one.
You put another one in.
So right now we're thinking about, we have to install the third engine within 5 years. So we're probably going to start going down that path rather soon.
What's the engine cost? What does it cost you guys
For just-
to add one more? I mean,
For one more engine, you're probably looking around $1 million. You're probably a little bit under $1 million, but you're probably, all of the infrastructure included, end price, it's probably $1 million.
Because then you guys, when you guys hook into the Idaho power grid, because that's what those big lines are coming off that motor, right, running down one of those directions to the grid. Does Idaho Power run cable up to a certain point, and then you're responsible, like up?
Yeah, we can show you if we walk outside, but we've got an interconnect. We built the line from the edge of our building here, so when those cables leave the alternators, they go into our switchgear room, which we have all the controls for shutting it down and those things, and then it pops out into transformers where we step that down onto smaller wire, send it out on the power lines to the edge of our property, and then there's a thing called an interconnect, and that's where Idaho Power puts a pole. We got a place to put a pole, and then Idaho Power hooks the two up. Our stuff ends here.
But you're responsible all the way.
So all of these power lines that you see, those are ours, up until the switchgear or the interconnect. And I think there's like three power poles on our property that are Idaho Powers, but anything from that point on is us. So it's our responsibility to keep it going up until that point. Anything past that point is Idaho Power.
Does Idaho Power encourage that project?
They love our type of power.
Okay.
And I can't speak for Idaho Power in particular, but I can say that like solar and wind are intermittent energy sources where our gas is coming, 24/7, 365. So that's a source of baseload power. They love baseload power projects like this, and it's a renewable resource,
Yeah.
So they were awesome to work with. We had a good working experience. We had no surprises at all. They were right up front, and they were really good to work with.
That's good for people to hear,
Yeah.
because everybody likes to, rip on the power company. But I mean, a deal like that, where you'd like to hear that they're out there. They're trying to create power without putting in dams or whatever, anything else that people can complain about.
They're really smart about it too. The way they get into a power purchase agreement is like for us, they said, look, this is a great project, right? But we don't need it right now. So we've got all this power online, we've got all these customers, but we don't need your power. We forecast that we will need your power in 3 years from now, so we're not going to pay you much for the first 3 years. But when we need your power, we're going to step you up and we'll pay you for it. So they're really upfront about that power, the process, everything, and it works really well for us. For us, it's like getting past the first 3 years of the project is the hardest part. Once that's done, it's all, gravy on top of that. It'll be easy. So, yeah, it's been a really fun process, I think, for everybody. Cool. So, yeah, thanks for coming down.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Recycled Idaho. And as we continue the journey across this great state, we look forward to bringing you more stories of people and organizations putting in the work to do the right thing.